People have this wrong idea about awakening. Awakening is not an experience, it is a realization. And realization means that it does not happen in time. It is a spontaneous knowing. But generally, we try to interpret awakening as it has been popularized in the spiritual circles. And we generally associate a person and say that the person is awakened. It is not that the person awakens. Awakening happens. That means realization happens. And the nature of this realization is impersonal. It is not personal. But when we think that the person awakens, we feel that they acquire certain special attributes which somehow makes them all loving, all caring, all good. But my personal experience says that there is no such thing as an awakened person. The person by nature is a changing entity. A changing entity that is witnessed in the light of awareness. So how can something that is a changing entity be real? The light of awareness, which is awakening, is itself real. Because it is unchanging. It is the unchanging principle that illuminates every change. Now, what happens is, most of us go through a spiritual experience and we get awed by the experience, which is fine. Having a spiritual experience, which could be any experience, which could be an out-of-body experience, or it could be experience of the image of a god or a goddess, or it could be a vision of us transcending something limited into vastness and seeing things from a very different perspective. But whatever it is, whatever is being perceived, is a part of the manifestation, which means it is all changing. And all that experience is pointing to is the unchanging principle, which is simply present here and now. So the masters have said that bring your awareness to the changeless background in which all of these experiences are manifesting. If you get caught up in the experience itself, then there is a tendency for the separate self or the ego to come up and say, I am special because I had this experience. I experienced that I am not the body, but it is still an experience which is experienced by an experiencer. The knowledge that I am not the body, when it happens as a recognition which is impersonal, there is no thought attached to it, which means it is not operating in the domain of time. And reality is that which illuminates time. So reality cannot be a part of the time. It cannot happen inside time. Reality is something which itself illumines time or phenomenality as we know it. But we get caught up. We say, no, I had an experience, I got awakened, And then I had these special attributes. I became kind, I became this, I became that. And there goes the separative mind with all its stories and fantasies once again. Then something happens, and again pain is experienced, suffering is experienced, dark night of the soul is experienced. Dark night of the soul is a very common experience after awakening. How I define awakening is that it is a crack into the structure of the personality. The crack is not caused by you through your efforts, the crack is caused by the awareness. And it is the awareness witnessing itself as the awareness. So, awakening is a glimpse into the nature of the absolute unchanging principle that shines within us as the I. It is a broader glimpse of that. Generally, we are caught up with the idea of I am this or I am that, which is experience. I experienced this, I experienced that, I had this experience, I saw myself from this perspective, from that perspective. But still, you are watching yourself from a perspective. But the one that is watching the watcher is the eternal constant. That alone is the truth. That alone is unconditional love. That alone is peace. That is what the sages would say is your swarupa. It is the eternal self. It cannot be objectified. It does not have any attributes. It does not have any qualities. It does not bestow any special qualities upon the person. Now the person may become calm, which usually happens after this phenomenon or non-phenomenon, but it is to be noted that the basic nature of the person does not change fundamentally. They still live with their likes and dislikes, beliefs and disbeliefs. It's just that they are not caught up in those stories because they've seen the illusion of thought. They've seen thought for what it is, and they're not investing in thought or thinking anymore. The separate self or the ego is still there because it is required for daily functioning, for day-to-day operations. Ego is identification with the name and form as a separate entity. And what Ramesh would add is with a sense of personal doership. So, identification with the name and form as a separate entity by itself is not the problem. Identification with the name and form as a separate entity with a sense of personal doership is what perpetuates suffering in life. Awakening is the realization that you are not the ego, you are not the small self, but yet the ego or the small self is there for interpersonal interactions. However, its nature is transitory. It appears and disappears. The personality, the person comes up and goes. So whatever comes up and goes cannot be real. So where is the question of person being enlightened or awakened? That whole concept is flawed in my opinion. To be free from these ideas of specialness of awakening, which actually causes spiritual ego, it causes this huge burden that we call as the spiritual ego, which is one of the toughest forms of ego and very painful. When we think we know, when we think we are, when we say and claim that We are the absolute. But in my concept, only concept, I say that the absolute is there. The absolute alone is there. And all masters have said the same thing. Consciousness is all there is. So I don't say I am the absolute. They cannot be two, you see. So we misunderstand this term awakening. A better word to describe it would be understanding, impersonal understanding, or impersonal recognition. Because it is a knowledge of the being. It is not the intellectual knowledge that is acquired from external sources. Anything that is acquired is limited. But what is present here and now is unlimited. And it is only the quiet mind that can truly know this presence, this infinity. The moving mind, the mind identified with I am this, I am that, I should do this, I should do that, will never know this wholeness. And generally what we do is we try to use the instrument thought because we have invested so much in thought and thinking, and it works beautifully for creative projects. In the world, in critical thinking, it works beautifully. But when it comes to knowing your own nature, it fails miserably. Because with thought comes the thinker, and this divide between the thought and the thinker creates separation, which obscures reality. So at some point, the thinker has to subside, and what remains is pure thinking or pure experiencing, which is not happening in the domain of time. Because every moment of that experience is happening in the now. And everything that is arising right now here has a stamp of reality to it. Like Nisargadatta Maharaj said the same thing in his book I Am That you can look at the tick of the clock, and every tick has a stamp of reality to it, although it is the same movement. So when the tick stops for a moment, at that point, if the awareness is high, one can see the true nature of it. Similarly, there is a small gap between one thought, the ending of one thought, and the beginning of another thought. If that gap is paid attention to, that gap is the freedom that we seek. That is the eternal background, that is the vastness in which all thoughts are playing. It is the infinite playground of everything. But when we are caught up in the ideas, for example, I present awakening as just a concept to explain. My idea is not to awaken you or enlighten you. Neither am I awakened or enlightened. My idea is simply, I'm giving you a concept. Use the concept and see if it brings peace to your life. If it generates kindness and compassion in your relationships. If it brings stability and awareness in your daily living. That is all what this is about. I'm not worried about past life or future lives, right or wrong. I do not know what is right or wrong. Because when there is a crack in the structure of the personality, these dualistic concepts begin dissolving. And that is why after awakening, there is a period which is very painful. Awakening is a very painful experience for most people. It is blissful in the moment, but afterwards there is a journey of a very painful period, which is called in the scriptures as the dark night of the soul. This is where one experiences the highs of highs and the lows of lows. Intense emotions, overwhelming emotions, exhausting, debilitating, and it is seen by many people as depression. They will give it technical names, but it is a spiritual process that is happening, where this knowledge that all there is consciousness is being delivered. But we get the wrong idea that awakening is a personal process. It is impersonal recognition. It is a crack into the structure of personality, and it is instantaneous. It does not require time. You cannot think your way to awakening. Thinking is an instrument of the mind, and mind is something which is caught up in duality. It cuts into two, the subject and the object. So it remains in the domain of time. It appears and disappears. It is there in the waking state, it disappears in the sleep state. Then it comes up again. And as this mind comes, there comes the world, the objectified world. Without mind, there is no world. There is just this, whatever is arising. So, letting the mind quiet and recognizing one's true nature as wholeness, recognizing that purity is not to be attained through arduous practices, but purity is one's true nature. That is self-realization. Although practices are not bad, even meditation, yoga, japa, these practices are not bad. They make the mind one-pointed, single-pointed, which brings a lot of benefits also in daily living. Because if the mind is scattered, if the mind is divergent, like completely entangled in thought, then it is difficult to function. There is a lot of restlessness, anxiety, stress, dissonance. So having the mind one-pointed is beneficial. However, mind by nature is a wanderer, and this has been said by Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharishi in his book, I Am That. In his book, Who Am I? Mind by nature is a wanderer. So when you recognize the true nature of the mind, you recognize that which illumines the mind, which means you have to go beyond thought into this place of effortless restfulness, totally relaxed, totally quiet. Then you understand what this impersonal recognition means, because in that, two, the subject and the object, becomes one. But till there is mind, there will be conflict. Because mind divides everything into the opposites. So no matter how strong your thought is about a particular subject, your belief is, there will always be an opposing doubt. And these two opposing forces will always cause dissonance, cause stress. So effortlessness is a place of no stress, is a place of total relaxation. So just being with this thought me, conceptual thought me, itself is the gateway. Just being with this thought allows for the awareness to crack this structure. And when the structure cracks, anything, when a crack is experienced anywhere, it is going to be painful. So don't expect that your life will all of a sudden become smooth, happy, blissful. What will happen is there will be total acceptance of life and its flow, total acceptance of the polarities, happiness, unhappiness, and that itself brings peace. So it is about peace, it is not about being special, having special attributes assigned to a person who we say is awakened. Person never awakens. Person by nature is an illusion. It comes and it goes. Awakening happens. And it is impersonal.